All right, next up, consider impossible action. First reading an ordinance amending Chapter 53 zoning of the City of Kyle, Texas for the purpose of assigning original zoning to approximately 17.19 acres of land from agriculture to single-family residential R13 for property located at 1001 South Sledge Street in Hays County, Texas. Mr. Koontz, I'll do the public hearing after you provide your introduction.
Okay, sure. My name's Howard Koontz, Community Development Director for the record. This request is being made for a property a little over 17 acres down on the south end of town on Sledge Street, just before its intersection with Opal. The request is to take this property, which is not, which has recently been brought into the city. It was annexed by the council at the previous meeting and now needs its inaugural zoning placed on it. They seek R13, which is a single-family residential district, single-family detached structures being built on lots that are approximately 50 feet wide. That is the zoning that was enabled last year, and it is the most analogous to the zoning that we don't use anymore that's called R1, the old residential zoning, which are also 50-foot lots by 100 lots. Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-2 to recommend approval of the request as presented. And it is in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan, so the staff has found to make recommendation for approval as well. So I can make myself available for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Koontz?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
I didn't attend, or I didn't watch the meeting online for P&Z. What were the concerns of the two nay votes?
It's my understanding that the concern was the density of residential that was going to be constructed on this parcel. As it relates to the quality of the infrastructure that's down there, specifically Sledge and Opal Streets, and the idea that the homes, which will probably be built, and I haven't seen a plan, but I'm going to guess that it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 units to the acre, probably. That number of homes that would be placed on the site may very well overtax the ability to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Koontz? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. I have 3 members who've asked to come forward and speak. I apologize, I didn't keep order, so I'm just going to call up the first one that's on here. Annette Berry, coming to register an opinion against. Ms. Berry, if you please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Annette Berry. My husband and I own a house at 214 Jerry Lee's Trail in Bradford Meadows, across the street from this lot. We disagree with the R13 zoning. My first point is the flooding concerns. Sledge Street already floods. Before the rain today, there was already water standing in the culvert. The developer says he will not build houses in the floodplain there, but the FEMA preliminary BFEs currently extend to the existing house on this property and existing homes in Bradford Meadows. And current development on Scott Street will increase watershed runoff into this floodplain, considering the tons of fill they're moving in and the impervious cover that will sit on top of that fill. And zoning this property R13 allows the maximum amount of impervious cover and causes the maximum increase in runoff. Therefore, without developing in the floodplain proper, flood levels will rise. Second point, R11, R12, and 3 are all recommended zoning uses for this plot within Kyle's Historic Core Area Transition Land Use District. I quote from the attached title, Comprehensive Plan Text. This district is a middle landscape of historic residential forms that transition to more rural residential forms. This plot is on the outer edge of the historic core area and therefore should be a transition to more rural residential forms. This is not R1, this is R1. This is not R3, this is R1 or 2. In fact, the majority of homes in the blocks immediately surrounding Old City Hall are not as densely built as this plot of land would be under R13. Another point, the same attachment talks about character. Character in this historic district is not having as many houses as legally possible crammed together with cars parked up and down both sides of the streets in the subdivision because they're just 50-foot lot street widths and 1,000-square-foot homes, the garage full of goods, and the driveway too narrow for the 2.5 cars that each household owns. Character for this plot is transitioning to a more rural residential form as called for in city planning. That is R1, 1, or 2. Another point, Sledge is a narrow road out by this plot with no sidewalks and ditches on both sides. With R13 development, will there be room for street widening or sidewalks? If you foresee this plot in Core Transition District as a place where residents will walk into downtown Kyle to shop, as called for in the Kyle Connected master transportation plan than planned now. That's R11 or R12. Another point, Sledge Street and Opal Lanes are the only roads in and out of this plot for this area, and it will be completely inadequate for the increased traffic at R13. Another point, if you allow R13 for this plot and the land bordering files to develop, they'll want the same zoning. Another point, with housing construction of all kinds currently underway in and around Kyle, there's no shortage of housing and therefore no reason other than profit for this property to build under R13 on such a small site. As a current homeowner in Kyle, a voter and a taxpayer, I urge you to zone this plot R11 or at least R12. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Berry. Next up, I have Genest Harding coming to register an opinion against agenda item number 11.
Hello, my name is Genest Harding for the record. I live at 163 Johnny's Way in Bradford Meadows. As I say, I live in Bradford Meadows, a subdivision right across the street from this property, and requesting zoning to change it from ag to R13. I am opposed to R13 for the following reasons. The lot size of 50 wide with setback of 16 feet street setback and only 10 feet in the rear. So looking out your back door, you have 10 feet to the next neighbor behind you and 5 feet on either side. That's pretty small. I live in Bradford Meadows again, and our lot sizes are 65 feet wide. And that is pretty small. In fact, I wouldn't want to live on a lot smaller than that. Bradford Meadows minimum lot size are 5,540 square feet, which is small. But this R13 would be 5,000 square feet lot. Bradford Meadows front minimum is 65 feet wide, which is by comparison to other subdivisions in Old Town Kyle, in the Old Town of Kyle and Hometown Kyle. For one, none of them are this small. R13 minimum lot size 50 feet wide is completely inconsistent with lot sizes for at least 3 surrounding miles. I have driven this, I know this area. I have lived in Kyle for 35 years this year. I know this neighborhood. I lived at 602 West Center Street for 18 years. Believe me, I know it. And that's not acceptable. It is just too dense, period. Please take the time to research these lot sizes just on Sledge, but on all the surrounding neighborhoods right here in the south side of Kyle. Street size for this R13 would be 50 feet wide. That will not accommodate street parking, as Ms. Berry just made note that in my neighborhood, we already have way too many cars parked on the street. You cannot pass another car adjacent, abreast on my street on Johnny's Way. And especially in the evenings, holidays, and weekends. Street width of 65 feet. We have so many cars on the street parked, especially on the weekends. And forget emergency vehicles getting through. This is a safety issue as much as an objection to just the density. Sledge is little more than a path, which accommodates the present traffic, but adding 95 more homes, which will be small starter homes with school-age children. By law, these children have to have a safe path to school to walk, and there are no sidewalks on the entire street from Opal to Blanco, right in front of Kyle Elementary. These children will not be able to walk to school safely. Elementary Street increase the school this will increase the school expense by having to provide bus transportation, widening Sledge, and putting in sidewalks and that's at taxpayer expense. There are no sidewalks. Sledge is not wide enough to accommodate sidewalks first, nor is it wide enough for a school bus and a car to pass each other in opposing directions as it is now. Is this safe for children to be walking to school, elementary age school children? So Bradford Meadows has 72 homes, and this proposal for R13 would allow 95 homes on a similar acreage. Again, too dense, which is inconsistent with the surrounding properties and neighborhoods. It was stated in the P&Z meeting that there were numerous lot sizes 50 feet wide. Well, I have driven around this entire Old Town area, and yes, I see there are a few, but they are very old and far from the norm, which is a lot of the homes are built on quarter-acre and half-acre lots. Take a look if you do not believe me. I have lived here, like I say, for 35 years, and I'm very familiar with this area. Please, just if nothing else, please step back and consider the citizens' input. Look around this whole downtown area and decide what you would prefer being put across the street from you. Which do you think you would prefer going across the street from you? Do you want to be endangering children walking to school on an unsafe street? Can't we just take a breath and consider all the negatives of a smaller lot sizes than even Bradford Meadows? I appeal to you to restrict this new development to lots consistent with surrounding neighborhoods, both old and new. Please consider the citizens' appeal, please. We are requesting at the very least, R12, and better yet, R1. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, I have Michael Bowen.
Yes.
Coming to speak on agenda item number 11 as well.
My name's Michael Bowen. I'm with Thunder Horse Development, and I'll be doing the proposed development on this property. And I just want to first thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And so this is a 17.2 acre parcel. We already had the survey done on it, and 2.2 of it is floodplain. And there will be no building within the floodplain that leaves 15 acres of net buildable. So when you take the 15 acres, you also have to take into account the roads, the detention for impervious cover, and any setbacks. And what we come up with is, when I did the first pass on it, about 66 lots. And on 17.2 acres, that's about 3.84 lots per acre. As Mr. Koontz said, about 4 lots per acre. And if you look across the road at Bradford Meadows, there are 73 lots on 15 acres, about 4.9, so it's actually going to be more dense over there. We do have the advantage of the floodplain, and what we intend to do with that is to make it a nice recreational area. There's a pond on it, and there'll be a nice walking path around that. It's in the historical core transition district, which a recommended zoning, R13 is a recommended zoning for the historical core transitional district. So it is a recommended zoning for that area. It says in the R13, and I'll just read straight from it, it says, the R13 single-family residential 3 district allows detached single-family residences with a minimum of 1,000 square feet of living area and permitted accessory structures on a minimum lot size of 5540 square feet, and there shall be no more than 5.5 houses per buildable acre. Will be a lot less than that. The size of the lots, the smallest lot that I'm targeting is a 50 by 115, which is a 5,750 square foot lot. And then the interior lots will be 50-foot lots. The exterior lots will be 60-foot lots. There'll be some along Sledge, and on the southern end of the property, they'll have depths of around 145 feet, just because of the layout of the land and the shape of it and the rectangle and the way the floodplain comes in. So with that being said, there'll be larger lots, and I'm going to size my lots and price them to target about a $300,000 plus home sales price. I've been speaking to some home builders, and I will enter into that arrangement once we get zoning and I present a concept plan that will go through this process. So, I'm very flexible, and I'm willing to work with the neighbors to address any concerns that they may have with anything that might be a negative to them, and see what we can work through.
Any questions for Mr. Bowen? Can you speak to the I believe Ms. Harding was talking about flooding on Sledge Street, as to whether or not you believe your property will contribute to the flooding on the street?
We have the floodplain, and we will put in adequate detention for all the impervious cover, and the engineering will be done, and we'll be able to move that water into the floodplain and through the natural creek bed or low-lying floodplain that runs east out of the property all the way to 35.
So you're saying?
I think that, yeah, it'll be adequate. It'll the way the street is, we'll have it, the water moving into the detention areas just on each side of the street. Well, they already have the detention on the Bradford Meadows side, but we'll have our own detention, and we'll have it calculated to move that water into the floodplain and out to the east. So I don't see a problem with flooding on Sledge Street.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Bowen? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak on this item? So two things. One, please state your name for the record. And two, if you wouldn't mind, there's some public comments form. If you wouldn't mind filling those out and submitting them to after the fact to either myself or the city secretary. Thank you.
I'm Mr. Vasquez, and this is Lisa. We're both here to oppose the track change, the AG to single-family residential. Mainly, there's a note on the P&Z comments in regards to the voting on the zoning change. There's a paragraph in here that says, as neighborhoods continue to see established around Old Town Kyle, the increase of residents in the vicinity will likely bring more foot traffic to the town square. My comment is that we already have the development going up by the library, the KB development. We also have the Cypress development. And I mean, to us, it seems like there's already more than enough foot traffic coming through Center Street and through the city of Kyle downtown. Plus, you have foot traffic, and not only foot traffic, but a lot of vehicular traffic. Which brings me to the Article 1 Code of Ordinances on Chapter 53, Section 53.3, Purpose and Intent. I'm not going to read all of it, but I just want to go into some of it. The primary purpose of this chapter are to promote health, safety, and the general welfare of the city and its present and future residents. Provide reasonable regulations and requirements to protect, preserve, improve, and provide for the health, safety, and general welfare of the present and future citizens of the city. And then it goes on to talk a little bit more about zoning guidelines. But it also mentions, while providing reasonable protection for both the public and persons having an ownership interest in property affected by these regulations. So, you know, we're including ourselves as we have ownership interest in this. Which brings me to the next item, which is the Article 1 in general, number 7. It states, lessen congestion in the streets and provide convenient, safe, and efficient circulation of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. So with this development going up, to me, it's on the contrary. It's not lessening. We're having more vehicular traffic and more pedestrian traffic. So my concern is Sledge Street doesn't have any sidewalks. My wife and I, we walk, and there's a lot of other neighbors that walk that street. More traffic's coming in, more pedestrian traffic is coming through, so there is more danger. There's buses going through all the time, EMS is going through. The street is not wide enough, barely wide enough, for two vehicles to cross each other. So my concern is also, who's going to be accountable if something happens on Sledge Street or in that neighborhood because of another development adding more vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic?
Which also increases the more kids in the neighborhood. And we see kids get off the buses every day, walk down those streets, and, you know, there's some speeders, unfortunately, that's in every neighborhood, so you can't prevent that. But there's cars that are going by, and you do get that bus and that car going by this way, it's no can do. Those kids are at risk when they get off those buses. And they're not dropped off at each little neighborhood. They're lumped. They go to Bradford, they're lumped, they're dropped off a whole big bunch there. They're over at First Street. So it's not like, you know, each street they're dropped off. You got a bunch of kids walking down a street. We've come close, we do. We live right there at Sledge and Opal. And we see the traffic and we see the kids all the time. We've been close being hit ourselves by cars driving by while we're taking our walk with our dog. I mean, there is no sidewalk space. There's both, it's all like ditches. It's a channel. And that's flood. That's where the water fills up going down that side of the street. So I'm not sure how you would even put sidewalks on the side of the streets there. It'll be flooded. So our big concern is safety of our children. And we don't have children. We're thinking about City of Kyle citizen children in that neighborhood.
In that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Mr. Koontz, do you have anything you want to add?